Hello, another review, this time of first two stories of Doctor Who, which came out in 1963, one of the longest sci-fi franchises alive today. Over 50 years old, nearly 60 in a few years. So, start with the first story, An Unearthly Child, if I got that right. Basically, it's a story of two teachers, Ian Chesterton and Barbara Wright, who are a bit curious about one of their students, Susan Foreman, who's smarter than she should be, knows a lot of things, but also doesn't, and a bit curious, so they follow her to a junkyard and grow a bit concerned and meet her father, the Doctor, played by William Hartnell, and they find also a blue police box. And hearing Susan's voice coming from the inside, they discover it is bigger on the inside. The Doctor tells them it's a time machine, a TARDIS, which stands for time and relative dimension in space. I forget what it's called. Is how they explain how the TARDIS is bigger on the inside. It's I'm not going to say, because I'll probably butcher it. So the Doctor explains that he is not only from the future, but he's also from a different planet. The Doctor essentially kidnaps Ian and Barbara because he doesn't want them telling anyone about them, and sets off in the TARDIS. They'll arrive back in time to the time of the cavemen, and this tribe is trying to create fire, and basically turns into a battle between two of these men who are trying to fight over leadership. And because they see the TARDIS, one of them sees the TARDIS arriving, they believe they can create fire, especially with the Doctor smoking a pipe. It's also explained that the TARDIS can take the shape of any object that it likes when it arrives at a location, but for some reason it is stuck, looking like a police box. So they eventually, after a few incidences, they manage to escape, and after one of the men becomes leader, and after it's a long, complicated story of cavemen try to discover. Well, they know about fire. They just don't know how to create it, and the Doctor and crew help them to a degree. So after leaving, they set off in the TARDIS. And I'll not explain that's great. It's actually not a bad story, for a child. Gets you into it. Sets you up the precipice of, time machine, go anywhere in time and space. introduces this mysterious man named the Doctor from a different planet. He's a bit, pardon my French, a bit of a dick at times, but also a kind-hearted man other times. So the story ends with the TARDIS arriving on a new planet and them going out to investigate, but not noticing on the console that the radiation counter is going into the danger zone. So, yes, I'll continue with the second story, the Daleks. Of course, this story introduces the Doctor's oldest and greatest enemies. It's actually his own fault that he meets them. When the Doctor and the others exit the TARDIS, they find they're in a petrified forest. It's completely petrified, no barely any life. The Doctor eventually guesses that a neutron bomb, nuclear bomb, was detonated and it killed the planet. However, they find a giant city. The Doctor wants to investigate, but Ian is against it because he wants to get back home and refuses to let the Doctor go. So the Doctor sabotages his TARDIS and says that they need a component. I think they need Mercury for the component. So they decide to go to the city to find Mercury. And that's there when they meet the Daleks. The Daleks are mutated creatures that are trapped there in these tanks. It's explained that 500 years ago on this planet, Scarrow, that there was a war between the Daleks' ancestors and an race called the Thals, and that the Daleks detonated a neutron bomb in the hopes of wiping them out. Daleks did this because they hate anything that isn't a Dalek. Daleks hate that the Thals were horribly mutated, which is not a fact. They were kind of mutated, but again, blonde hair and kind of pale skin, but in fact, normal looking. Also, the Daleks are the ones that are mutated, are trapped in their tanks. They also can't leave their city because that's where the power comes from. Ian, Barbara, Susan and the Doctor are unfortunately afflicted by the radiation. So Susan goes out to get drugs from the Thals. The Daleks later go out because they want the drugs themselves, because they want to leave their city and rebuild Scarrow. Susan finds the Thals and they're peaceful. They're not they're against violence, so they want peace with the Daleks. So they give Susan the drugs and she saves her friends. But the Daleks discover the drugs are poisonous to them, so they can't use them. So the only way they're going to survive on Scarrow's surface is if they irradiate the planet, killing out all life. The Doctor and the others manage to escape killing the Dalek by removing it from the floor where its electrical powers come from, and remove the Dalek creature inside. An escape with Ian piloting the Dalek casing. Once with the Thals, they manage to get Fowls to agree to help them to defeat the Daleks because the Ian lost the TARDIS component, the Dalek City. So they split up. Ian and Barbara leading a foul group through the back of passageway, whilst the Doctor and Susan try to enter the city for the front but get captured. Discover what the Daleks are planning to do. Ian and Barbara and the Fowls are able to enter the city and are able to destroy the Daleks' power supply before they can irradiate the Scarrow. The Daleks seemingly die. Now the TARDIS component, the Doctor leaves. Doctor and the others leave the Fowls to take Scarrow as their own and hopefully rebuild. Of course, the Daleks survive somehow, despite the fact the power source was destroyed. But it's probably safe to assume that there was more Daleks on Scarrow than just in this city. So this was my first review of Doctor Who, and it's the first 2 stories. I'm not going to do all the Doctor Who stories because obviously the classic stories are not all complete. So I'm going to try and do the Dalek stories that are complete. The Dalek stories, the Doctor Who stories that are complete, sorry. So, bye.